Turner of Ohio, who serves as a ranking Republican on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks so much for being here. So let's start with this meeting between Chinese President Xi and Russian President Putin today. How significant do you think it is, Putin's acknowledgement that Beijing had questions and concerns about the war in Ukraine?
Well, it's very significant. But this meeting is a far cry from the meeting that they had in February where they declared no limits, because apparently there were limits because China offered no military assistance to Putin or Russia during their incursion into Ukraine. But also, Putin stands with Xi much diminished. When he first stood there, even the United States thought that he would go easily into Ukraine. He did not. That complicates things for President Xi as he looks to what he might want to accomplish militarily with Taiwan. And also, Putin rallied the entire world around their military incursion, which of course makes it more difficult for China to then undertake a similar incursion toward Taiwan. And the other aspect of this is that you have the reports of just the atrocities that are occurring in Ukraine. It really shows that Russia, the brutality of what they're doing, and certainly that doesn't play well anywhere.
Yeah, and we're learning more about these atrocities as the Ukrainians recapture territory. The U.S. government has been pretty careful not to call this new part of the war where Ukraine is recapturing territory. They're not calling it a turning point in the war. They're not calling it a critical moment that will determine the outcome. Here's a quote from a U.S. defense official, quote, "It's more important than ever that we don't appear to be spiking the ball." What do you think? Is that a valid concern?
Well, it's always a concern whenever there are advances on the part of Ukraine in that Russia has options, and we don't know what options that they might deploy, and certainly that's of a concern. But one thing that we do know is Ukraine is making advances. Russia is losing territory. This is significant and it's real. It certainly has put Russia in a disadvantaged position. It certainly has shown that their military capability is not what they had believed in that region. But the other thing, it has put off their ability to have referendum in the area and then claim that they have annexed that territory. Holding off those plans really sets back Putin's agenda.
And sources tell CNN the U.S. is still not likely to provide Ukrainian forces with longer-range missile systems, which Ukraine has been requesting for months. CNN has been told that the Biden administration still believes providing those systems would be seen by Moscow as an escalation and would result in a retaliatory step by Moscow. Do you agree with that reasoning?
I think this administration has been very cautious in what they have done, taking very, very small steps because they've been worried about provoking Russia. But in this, what Russia has already done is provocative. And the atrocities that are occurring, their open threats to Poland, Romania, to the Balkans, the Baltics themselves, all of that area, I think, is of grave concern. And I think that we need to be certainly supporting Ukraine with everything we can give them.
So you think they've been too cautious? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, they've been slow on the uptick. The Congress has been leading in on this, both on passing legislation for providing lethal aid and in funding lethal aid. But also, it's been slow to get in. I mean, you were reporting that certainly in the beginning.
Sure.
But I think at this point, we really need to see a win by Ukraine, and they're close.
So what would you say to somebody from the Biden administration who says, hey, look at these, you were just acknowledging the Ukrainian victories. That didn't just happen. That happened because the West, led by President Biden in the United States, has been giving all sorts of aid, weapon systems, probably a lot of stuff we don't know about, that you know about, but you can't tell me.
Well, what we've seen every time we've increased the capabilities and the lethal aid that we've given to the Ukrainians, they have stepped up, been able to deploy those capabilities, and they've won ground. That's what's exciting, is that we're actually seeing successes, and we hope that successes continue. And we certainly think, President Zelensky's leadership in rallying that nation and the military capabilities that we're watching being deployed are impressive.
CNN's been told that former UN ambassador and New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson met with leaders of Russia in Moscow this week. He does, of course, as you know, historically provide help to families of hostages and detainees, and there are at least 2 Americans being held a prisoner in Russia. But I want you to listen to what White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby told me yesterday about Richardson going there.
Our message is that private citizens should not be in Moscow at all right now, and that private citizens cannot negotiate on behalf of the United States government. We share Mr. Richardson's desire to see Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan home with their families, and we're working very, very hard at doing that through government channels. That's the appropriate way to do that, and those efforts are ongoing.
So is Bill Richardson freelancing, and what do you think? Should he leave Russia?
Well, I wouldn't know to what extent that he is, working with the administration through back channels or not. But I will tell you this: there certainly are grave concerns as to what the administration might be willing to get up in any of these negotiations. We certainly want, what we would consider to be hostages freed. We certainly want Americans to come home, and I think certainly everybody is very supportive of the administration in those negotiations. But we do have to be very concerned as to what we give in exchange, and that's something will be born yet to be seen.
Do you have concerns about the Russian arms dealer in a U.S. prison whose name has been floated as a possible trade?
Absolutely.
You don't think he should be let go?
Well, I no, and I think that when you start to signal also your willingness to give things that we should not. Russia also ups the ante. They never accept any level of concession as goodwill. They receive it as a walkback.
All right, very interesting. Congressman Mike Turner, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Coming up next, an inside look